Welcome inside Appalachia. I'm Bill Lynch, filling in for Mason Adams. Historian Mills Kelly's love affair with the Appalachian Trail started when he was a Boy Scout. He was 12.
I remember thinking, wait a minute, that trail that we've been hiking on for the last year that goes all the way to Georgia, where my grandparents live, and all the way to Maine.
The region is best known for exporting coal, but it's losing people too.
What the demographers look at is that we are basically exporting the future population of Appalachia to other regions of the country.
And Cuz's Uptown Barbeque in southwestern Virginia fuses Asian ideas with Appalachian comfort food, like cheesy egg rolls.
No, actually, one of our old staff came up with the idea. She wanted to put a slice of cheese, and the thing that was around was Velveeta. So after we tasted it, we thought, wow, that's good.
You'll hear these stories and more this week inside Appalachia.
Support for Inside Appalachia is provided by Festival Charleston, May 22nd through the 31st, presenting the Festival Family Cookout on Memorial Day, featuring a classic picnic atmosphere, live entertainment at City Center, and the whimsical charm of a carnival sideshow along Summer Street. Full schedule available at festivalcharleston.com.
Welcome inside Appalachia. I'm Bill Lynch. Mills Kelly knows an awful lot about the Appalachian Trail. While he's never attempted a through hike, the lifelong hiker has covered hundreds and hundreds of miles of the trail. He's also a trail scholar. He shares its history on the Green Tunnel podcast. He's also written several books about the trail, including his most recent. It's called A Hiker's History of the Appalachian Trail. I recently spoke with Kelly about his life with the AT. Where does the trail begin for you? How did you first discover the trail? How does it enter your life?
Yeah, it's a great question. You know, it was in the early 1970s. Became a Boy Scout in 1971. I lived in Northern Virginia at that point. We had moved up from Franklin County down near Roanoke. And so I was a Boy Scout, and we went hiking on this trail in Shenandoah National Park called the Appalachian Trail. My scoutmaster, I still remember Mr. Ballard. He was a Marine from California. He fought his way across the Pacific in World War II, and he believed that Boy Scouts should just go backpacking. That's what Boy Scouts was all about for him. And he would take us up to Shenandoah, and if he knew that that trail was a 2,000-mile long trail, he never mentioned it. It was just this trail that we hiked on in Shenandoah National Park. I mean, I was 12. What did I know? And so the following year, after I started in Boy Scouts, a man named Ed Garvey, who lived in the neighborhood, came and talked to us about his through hike of the trail. He was the first person to publish a book about a through hike. He wasn't the first through hiker, just the first one to actually write a book about it. And he gave us this slideshow of his hike. And I remember thinking, wait a minute, that trail that we've been hiking on for the last year that goes all the way to Georgia, where my grandparents live, and all the way to Maine, which was kind of a vague concept for me at age 12. And so that's how it got started. And the next time we went, I remember standing at one of the mileage posts. Shenandoah has these weird cement posts that they put the mileage information on. I remember standing at one of those posts and like looking south and thinking, wow, I could like walk to my grandparents. Only be 700 miles, but I could do it.
700 miles.
So that's really how it came into my life in the first place.
But you continue to go back to the trail over and over.
Yeah. Childhood is so different now than what it was in the 70s, because as soon as I got my driver's license, my next door neighbor was the same age as me, and he also liked to hike. And so on Friday afternoon, we come home from school and we would just take either my parents' car or his parents' car and leave a note saying, we'll be in Shenandoah and see you Sunday. We just take off and go backpacking. I was talking to my parents about it before they died, and my father said, well, if you hadn't been home when we woke up on Monday morning, we would have called the park. So, and of course, the Appalachian Trail in Shenandoah National Park is 102 miles long. So I don't know where they would have started, but looking for us. And so all through high school, first was Boy Scout, and then later just with friends, I was on the trail a lot. Again, primarily in Shenandoah National Park because it was convenient to where I lived. And then I went to UVA in Charlottesville, and so continued. And then it kind of dropped out of my life for a while because I moved to DC. I got a job. I traveled all the time for work. I got married. It's like all these things happened. And it didn't really come back into my life again until 2001 when we moved back to Virginia. And then I had little kids at that point, and I made them start hiking. Four and two, age 4 and 2, they did their
Oh
first
my.
hike on the Appalachian Trail.
Right. The lore and the history of the trail, that's something you kind of had to that takes a while to pick up. Where did you start with that?
Yeah, because it's 100 years worth of history,
Hmm.
and from a research standpoint, it's really complicated because the trail runs through 14 states. It's a national park since 1968. It's managed by volunteers. It's the only national park managed almost exclusively by volunteers. But there are 33 volunteer clubs, so each of those clubs has an archive. The Appalachian Trail Conservancy has an archive, the National Park Service, the U.S. Forest Service, a whole bunch of state and local authorities. So just trying to wrap my mind around the sources was hard enough. But I have to say I've been really the beneficiary of some incredibly generous trail club volunteers, volunteer archivists, people like that who've really helped me out along the way. Yeah, so I started in 2016 to write the book. I started to write the book that just came out this past October, but I got derailed along the way by a different book. And then, maybe you remember something happened in the spring of 2020 that kind of derailed everything. But I started just doing archival research in 2016 and trying to understand the history of the trail from the perspective of hikers and people who lived in the communities along the trail, rather than the people who created the trail managers. That sort of administrative history wasn't as interesting to me as the stories of the people who actually used the trail and help take care of it.
A Hiker's History of the Appalachian Trail. That's the book that just came out last
Mhm.
fall. Part of what interested me is about that book in particular is it didn't like through hikers, the folks who take on the whole thing. I think you point out in the book that it's like 0.5%, or it's a very small number of people
Mhm.
who actually use the trail, but they dominate the conversation because it's an epic adventure. It's
Right, right.
I wondered if because they have such a large voice in the room on about the trail that made it harder to get hold of information.
It did in an interesting way because we know a lot about the thru hikers because they wrote things about their experiences. They wrote books, they wrote journals. There's a pretty popular website called trailjournals.com where people upload their journals from their hikes, and now they have YouTube channels and Instagram feeds and lots of other things. And so we just know a lot about them. But if you and a couple of your friends go and hike on the trail for 2 hours and then you go home, you don't write anything about that. And if you did, who would read it? It's because it's not much of a story, not much of a narrative arc there. And so to get to the average hikers, it occurred to me that the way to do that is through the shelter registers. There are 250 plus shelters along the trail, and every one of them has had a register logbook of some kind in it since the 1930s. And they get replenished whenever they get filled up. And so I went and started reading those because that's where you and your friends, you might have stopped at the shelter for some water and maybe to have a snack, and there's a register book, and so you wrote a couple sentences about your day and how nice it is to be out in the woods with my buddies, and we saw a turkey with her chicks. That was pretty awesome, and that's it. That's what you wrote, and so that one little snippet doesn't tell us anything. But I read hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pages of these things spread out across the decades. And that's how I let the story of the hikers emerge.
Did anything change over the course of the decades that you read? Do they have like an arc?
Yeah, there are a couple things that changed. One that just struck me as really funny when I first noticed it is up until the early 1960s, when people would write in the shelter registers, they would often write their name, their address, and their phone number, which means get in touch. Because why else would you write that? And I remember thinking, wow, that's like, who would do that today? And then it occurred to me, oh, well, people do it all the time. They just do that by posting on Facebook or Instagram or whatever. It's just another version of the same thing. But what you see up until the 60s, hiking was much more of a group activity. You did it with your church group, you did it with your scout troop, you did it with your alumni club, you did it, just with a group, with a trail club, with a hiking club. And so people would hike in these groups of 10, 15, 20 people at a time. And sometime in the 1960s, that group hiking largely fades. Doesn't go away entirely, but it becomes less and less popular. And individual hiking or hiking maybe with one other person becomes much more popular. So the comments reflect that. They stop mentioning like our group, and instead it's my buddy or my husband or my son or whatever. And it's just much smaller groups of people. And so the experience changes as a result. So that's one thing. And then certainly by the 1970s, as backpacking and hiking really took off as a recreational activity, you start seeing some more negative comments, mostly about the condition of the trail. Like, why isn't anybody trimming back to poison ivy? Or this privy needs to be replaced. Or there's a book that I read when I was preparing to write this book, and the author, it's about a history of hiking in America, and he says, a guy named Silas Chamberlain, and he says that sometime in the 1970s, hikers kind of, and not just on the Appalachian Trail, but in general, kind of transitioned from trail creators. They worked in trail clubs, they were volunteers, they helped out, to trail consumers. And they started seeing public lands as something that they consumed rather than something that they took care of. And so it was up to other people to take care of it. And so you start to see that kind of complainy, snide comments about trail conditions. And then you see sort of clapbacks from the volunteers, like, you don't like it, come volunteer. So there's some of that. And then the other thing that changes is that you see more and more older people out hiking for longer distances, doing 50 miles, 100 miles, 200 miles. And that was something that I hadn't expected. I knew that older people hiked. I knew that there are older people who thru hike, but you see a lot more of that. In thinking about it, I think a lot of them were sort of like me. They had a career, they raised their children, and now they have a lot more leisure time. And so this was a thing that they can enjoy now because they have the time to do it and they have the resources.
Let me ask about the podcast, The Green Tunnel, 51 episodes, right?
I'm really, really proud of that podcast. I'm especially proud of it because every episode was produced by a student, either an undergraduate or a graduate student, mostly graduate students, but we had one really fabulous undergrad also. We would sit down as a team and plot out the season, 12, 15, 20 episodes, whatever we decided on. We'd plot out all the episodes, and then people would pick the ones that they wanted to work on. Because I was the host and I was the one who had all the content knowledge, then the students would meet with me and say, okay, who should I be interviewing? What should I read? And then they would go off and do that sort of pre-production research, set up interviews. I would do the interviews, but they would sit in on the interviews. And then they would take all of that interview content and cut it up into bits and pieces, because if you've listened, that it's a narrative style podcast, not an interview style. So we had to kind of piece things together, and they had to pick out sound files and lots of other things, and they would do the first draft, and then I would rewrite it in my voice because they couldn't really write in my voice. And then we'd kind of bat it around some more, and then we would record. Then they would learn how to do the audio editing, and so it was really an incredible learning experience for them. And several of them have gotten really good jobs. Where one of the questions in the interview was, "Tell me about that podcast you worked on." So that helped. It didn't get them the job, but it certainly helped get them the job.
Through hiking, you mentioned older folks getting out there and doing that. I'm not sure what your schedule is. I think are you still teaching?
No, I'm retired.
Okay, well there you go. You're retired.
Yep.
Have you made plans to do a through hike? Have you ever wanted to?
I definitely wanted to. In fact, in my college application essays, I said that that's what I was going to do when I graduated. Because in 1977, that would have been really surprising to some admissions committee, because almost nobody did it then. I think in 1977, probably, I don't know, 100, 150 people tried a through hike, as opposed to a couple thousand this year. So it was an ambition, but one that, my life just went in a whole bunch of different directions than that. And so it is no longer my ambition to do a full through hike, but what I would like to do at a minimum is finish the whole southern half of the trail. And because I'm well on my way to doing that. So, and if I finish that, then I'll think about, heading north.
That was author and historian Mills Kelly. His book, A Hiker's History of the Appalachian Trail, is available from the History Press. Nobody loves ticks. The bloodsuckers have a reputation for spreading Lyme disease, but that's not all. They can also infect people with alpha-gal syndrome, a red meat allergy. Symptoms of the allergy can range from a rash to a crippling gastrointestinal upset. It has even very rarely led to death. Sometimes the allergy fades over time, but sometimes it doesn't, and there is no cure. But as WMRA's Christine Cuter reports, some are getting relief through acupuncture.
It was the scariest steak supper Travis Brown ever ate.
I'm either cured or I'm going to the hospital. Fork in one hand and the EpiPen in the other.
The 40-year-old Culpeper native had been diagnosed with an alpha-gal allergy in 2012 after enduring mysterious episodes of crippling stomach upset, swelling, and hives for nearly a year. Brown spent the next decade avoiding red meat, dairy, and certain animal byproducts like gummy bears and Jell-O. He stopped going to cookouts, rarely ate in restaurants, and downed a lot of chicken and fish.
Well, years ago, I'd heard of acupuncture being a potential cure for the condition, but back then, I guess I was naive, and I was like, no way. There's no way. A friend of mine had told me that he was going to try this out with a doctor in Charlottesville. And I was like, wishing him the best. Like, I hope it works. But back in my brain, I was like, impossible. He sent me a picture one day of him eating a steak. And I was like, all right, sign me up. I'm in.
Brown booked an appointment with Charlottesville acupuncturist Michael Jabali in 2023, who inserted an eyelash-sized needle, a procedure called the Solomon Auricular Allergy Treatment, or SAT, into the concha of his left ear and covered it with a tiny bandage. 1 month later, Jabali removed the needle, and Brown fired up his grill.
I went home and immediately grilled a T-bone, and I cut a piece about the size of my fist. And it was the scariest meal of my life. That day, I only ate the fist-sized portion, and I waited. No stomach issues. I tried it again the next day, just like a double check, and nothing. I've been eating red meat every day since.
The Centers for Disease Control estimates that nearly 500,000 Americans have alpha-gal syndrome, though another study asserted that 30% of Americans had it. Even as many clinicians still haven't heard of it. Scientist Thomas Platzmills at the University of Virginia, the first to identify the link between the allergy and the bite of the Lone Star tick, believes at least 5% of Central Virginians have it. That's more than 17,000 people. Alpha-gal syndrome is characterized by an allergic reaction 3 to 6 hours after eating red meat, and sometimes dairy, with symptoms that can range from mild to seismic. Itching, hives, swelling, debilitating gastrointestinal distress, and even full-on anaphylaxis. But some who test positive for the alpha-gal allergy may never develop allergic reactions, though they remain at risk of developing one. It can even be a killer. Platzmills stops short of recommending acupuncture, but he doesn't discount it.
I think if you have a syndrome like this where you can have the antibodies and you don't get symptoms, and you can be changed from being in the symptomatic class to the non-symptomatic class, I think that's great. I'm in favor of that. I don't recommend it because, we've trained so thoroughly not to recommend alternative medicine. But the truth is some alternative medicine works. I think they actually have a treatment that works, doesn't work permanently, doesn't work for everybody, but then that's true of every other medicine we've got. Hopelessly true.
While there is no known cure for alpha-gal syndrome, there is some evidence acupuncture may help. A 2021 study found that 96% of patients who had acupuncture for alpha-gal allergies reported that their symptoms went into remission. While the study lacked lab values and didn't include a control group, some, including nurse Rebecca Smith, are nevertheless convinced. Smith of Dillwyn was diagnosed with alpha-gal syndrome in 2018 after getting a tick bite while camping.
I'm a good old country girl, so we have meat with pretty much every meal. So I eat fish, turkey, and chicken a lot. That part kind of sucked. I miss steak a lot.
It went on that way until late 2025 when acupuncturist Jessica Dodds put 6 needles in Smith's right ear for 5 weeks. By Christmas, Smith was eating ham.
I had never tried anything like that before. Being in medicine, you kind of tend to think those theories are better, like doing the antihistamine medications to treat stuff, but it didn't work for alpha-gal really. So, I just figured it was something I had to modify my diet and go on about myself, Now I don't have to worry about what's in a meal at a cookout or how food's cooked at a restaurant or any of that, which is really nice.
Acupuncturist Mila Zimmerman got SAT certified this spring and gets daily phone calls about alpha-gal.
I'm not a person who frowns upon Western medicine at all. We need it. And I think it can be very diagnostic. I'm noticing people are running out of solutions, or the doctors are running out of solutions for some of the things they're coming across. That's where people are seeking alternative care because they're getting frustrated.
Jabali, the acupuncturist who treated Travis Brown, estimates that 1/3 of his clients are looking for allergy relief.
You know, the bird watcher's proverb, when the bird and the book disagree, always believe the bird. Don't dismiss your experience.
He urges everyone to keep an open mind. I'm Christine Cuter.
Coming up, coal country has long had booms and busts, but this time it's different. We'll have a conversation with a journalist about the population decline in some central Appalachian communities. You're Inside Appalachia. I'm Bill Lynch.
Support for Inside Appalachia is provided by the Charleston, West Virginia Convention and Visitors Bureau, Charleston WV, where scenic trails and on-the-water adventure meet cultural experiences in the capital city of West Virginia. Your adventure begins here at charlestonwv.com.
The population in Appalachia's coal-producing counties has declined since the boom of the 1950s. As the coal industry mechanized and shrunk, jobs went away, and young people did too. Now a series of population estimates show things might get even worse. Journalist Jim Branscombe grew up in southwestern Virginia and has been following this story. Mason Adams spoke with Branscombe back in the fall.
Jim Branscombe, thank you so much for coming on Inside Appalachia to speak with us.
My pleasure, Mason.
So the headline of your recent story in the Daily Yonder is The Alarming Depopulation of Appalachia's Coalfields, a quarter century of projected decline. I'd like to read the first couple of paragraphs here because they're pretty stark. By 2050, entire counties across Appalachia face the loss of nearly half their populations in what demographers describe as an accelerating demographic collapse unprecedented in American peacetime history. The demographic projections paint a devastating picture for the Appalachian coalfields. According to data from 3 major state universities, Central Appalachia faces population losses that rival the depopulation seen in war-torn regions or economic catastrophes abroad. So, what is happening in this region?
It's quite alarming, Mason. I first spotted the problem from reading Cardinal News. Dwayne Yancey had an article about the projections that were coming from the Weldon Center at the University of Virginia. And I wondered if anybody had taken a look at what was happening across the Central Appalachia as a whole. And I didn't find anything. So what I did was pull up the numbers from University of West Virginia and University of Kentucky and do a profile of what was going on in what we usually call main coalfield regions. And that's Central Appalachia, 60 counties in East Kentucky, Southern West Virginia, East Tennessee, and Southwest Virginia. The numbers are just startling, to say the least. The projections are that Buchanan County, Virginia, population will, over the next 25 years will decline 48%. Harlan County, Kentucky, the projections are it will decline 45%. Breathitt County, Kentucky, where J.D. Vance traces his roots to, is 39%. Across Southern West Virginia, it's similar numbers. You know, McDowell County, West Virginia has sort of become the poster child for depopulation, going from 100 and some thousand at its peak down to about close to 18,000 at the present time. So we're looking at something that's never happened in peacetime America. And of course, those who are familiar with the history of Appalachia know that between the 50s and the 70s, we had about 3 million people who left the Appalachian region, migrating to, the cities in Ohio, and Middletown, Ohio, like J.D. Vance has written about, Cincinnati. But there's a significant difference between what was happening then and what's happening now. What's happening now is that there's not a young population left to repopulate the region. In the 70s, we still had a young population, that could repopulate the region. And that happened across the region as a whole. 1965, when ARC started out, the population of the region was about 22.5 million. Today is 26.6 million. The southern Appalachian region in particular has been growing. And the dynamic is that we're in a spiral here. The basic premise of what the demographers look at is that we are basically exporting the future population of Appalachia to other regions of the country.
Some of these numbers for Kentucky, Virginia, and West Virginia are just eye-popping, and they're all in current or former coal-producing communities. Why are these areas seeing such stark projections in particular?
It's the collapse in the coal industry as a whole. We've gone from 100,000 coal miners at the end of World War II down to just a few thousand now across the region as a whole. Unfortunately, all of the promises that the politicians have made that they were going to do something about the situation just hasn't happened. We've just allowed these communities to continue to deteriorate, the population to leave, the tax base to decline, people to out-migrate to find work or commute extremely long distances to work. And when you get down to some of these population levels, you have school consolidations, you have hospitals closing, birthing centers, you have hospitals closing entirely. You have fire departments that can't maintain a volunteer fire department. Just the whole basis of what we all would call vibrant communities begins to collapse. You end up with an aging population. The population age of the central Appalachian counties is now approaching 50. Actually, at one point, Buchanan County, Virginia, had a younger population than the average in the state of Virginia. Now it's much older.
If you look at social media, it sometimes feels like the sign of the times is the laughing emoji response. And some people are definitely going to hear this and go, so what? Why does this matter for those communities, but also for the rest of us in greater Appalachia?
It matters a lot for the Appalachian. I think it matters a lot for the nation. Let's just start out from the cultural aspect. You know, if it hadn't been for the Appalachian Mountains, we probably wouldn't have country music and bluegrass music like we do today. But more importantly, maybe you wouldn't have some of the important things for the future. I've spent a lot of time studying what's going on in the drought in the West. We have an unprecedented drought been going on for 20 years from Colorado west to California. We grow over 50% of our vegetables in California, in Arizona, and transport it across the country. And that cannot continue. We're not going to have the water to continue doing that. And where are we going to grow the food? Well, the best place to grow the food is going to be back in Appalachia. We can replant a lot of these broom sage fields. And we're already seeing signs of how it can be done. We've got a number of what I would call vertical agricultural innovative projects in Appalachia. The most famous probably was the AppHarvest, which unfortunately went bankrupt, but the AppHarvest greenhouses are in East Kentucky are still being utilized by other corporations. There's a dramatic new one coming in Carroll County, Virginia, my home county. Osthouse Ventures, which is a United Kingdom company, is starting a $100 million innovative agriculture experiment to grow tomatoes. And the reason is simply because the water is there, the people, the workforce is there, the transportation is there. But we've got a lot of land on which you can grow food in the region. The second reason is I think Appalachia can be an experimental area for how you deal with climate change overall. And unlike Elon Musk, I think Planet B could very well be Appalachia. I think we can get to Appalachia a lot easier than we get to Mars.
There is one group of localities in your article that fit the profile of many of these others, but they're seeing different outcomes. And that's the counties in Tennessee. What's happening there that's different from the rest of this region?
The population is actually reversing and growing in these Tennessee counties that have been historical coal counties. Tennessee ceased to be a coal mining state in 2021 for the first time since the 1890s. And currently there's only one permitted mine in the whole state. It's a very small one in Claiborne County that got accelerated permission this past July. So what's happening there is Tennessee Valley Authority has been pulling back on coal-fired steam plant generation. That's one factor. And the reason the population is starting to grow is it's easily explained by anybody who drives up Interstate 75 from Knoxville towards Alexa, Kentucky. It's just beautiful, beautiful country. Knoxville has become a bit of a growth center. It's on 2 major interstate highways. It's had some intelligent planning. And the same applies to Oak Ridge, just north of there. So it's an easy commute from the Oak Ridge areas and Knoxville areas up into the historical Coalfield counties of East Tennessee. Plus, there's been some very decent looking ahead by leadership in those counties. And so the net result is some lessons that probably the rest of the region could take a look at.
Jim Branscombe, thank you so much for coming on and speaking with us today.
My pleasure.
We've got a link to Jim Branscombe's story in the Daily Yonder. It's at our website, wvpublic.org. Untreated infections are one of the most frequent causes of death in the U.S. Getting life-saving antibiotics is a challenge in rural areas that don't have easy access to hospitals. For the Appalachian Mid-South Newsroom, reporter Pierce Gentry tells us about an effort in Hawkins County, Tennessee to find a solution.
About 6 months ago, Brianna McMurray came home from the hospital with her newborn daughter. There hadn't been any complications, but it was a long drive home to Hawkins County from the nearest hospital, which is 45 minutes away. She was tired and ready to rest. That's when the pain began.
Started having pain in my upper abdomen. We couldn't get it to calm down, feel better, and I'm not one to go to the doctor very much.
McMurray thought it might have been her gallbladder.
I was like, I'm burning up. I can't get comfortable. I'm constantly sick to my stomach. It got so bad to the point of I was having chest pain.
She knew she had to go back to the hospital, another 45-minute drive. When she arrived, doctors told her she was septic. It's a severe, life-threatening condition.
It got really bad really fast.
If an infection is left untreated, people enter a state of shock known as sepsis, where their body begins to attack itself. According to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, it affects nearly 2 million adults in the U.S. every year. About 20% of them will die from it. Luckily, McMurray was treated with life-saving antibiotics because she made it to a hospital in a neighboring county. But many others in Hawkins County aren't so fortunate. When hospitals aren't accessible or shut down, it can have deadly consequences for people in rural areas when they have an emergency. And in sepsis cases, the one treatment that can save a life is not standard protocol on ambulances.
That's where the antibiotic administration comes in. We're directly attacking the problem that's causing the body to attack itself.
That's Sam McMurray. He's a sergeant with the county's nonprofit emergency medical service. He's also Brianna's husband and has seen firsthand how dangerous sepsis can be. For the last 2 years, he's been working to improve septic patients' odds of survival through a partnership between the county and Ballad Health, which operates the region's hospitals. Together, they're putting antibiotics on ambulances for the first time.
We'll get some bottles on you real quick, okay?
That's Hawkins County EMS paramedic Jacob Adams. He says having the antibiotics on his ambulance is a game changer.
And I was so excited to try it. I was so excited.
For decades, EMTs and paramedics could only manage symptoms with painkillers or fluids.
I have had one lady who, that's all she complained of was pain. And when we got her out there, she was very, very septic.
Now, thanks to Hawkins County's new protocol, Adams and other paramedics are trained to identify sepsis and administer antibiotics before the patient reaches the emergency room. This is harder to do in an urban area with multiple hospital operators. The EMS agency has to clear treatments with each one, which can be complicated. That's not the case in rural northeast Tennessee, where Ballad Health has a state-sanctioned monopoly on hospitals. Its agreement with Hawkins County is improving outcomes, according to local medical providers. But they need more data, says Todd Heffern. He's Hawkins County EMS's medical director.
I don't think you're ever going to get the volume here. Sepsis studies, where we really base our treatments on, are tens, if not hundreds of thousands of patients.
That's why Heffern hopes EMS providers across Tennessee and the U.S. will adopt similar programs.
That story is part of WPLN's Healthcare Hollow series, which is made possible in part by the NIHCM Foundation. Food in Appalachia is a blend of the food from all the other places people came from to get here. In West Virginia, we have pepperoni rolls because about 100 years ago, Italians working in the coal mines wanted an easy lunch. Different food ideas show up all the time. At Cuz's Uptown Barbeque in Tazewell County, Virginia, you get local mountain flavors but with an Asian-inspired twist. There are items on the menu like morel mushrooms, cheesy egg rolls, and country ham caprese. In 2022, Folkways reporter Connie Bailey Kitts and her family stopped in at Cuz's for dinner. Connie brought us this story.
It's a little past 5:30, and the gravel parking lot of Cuz's Uptown Barbecue is full of cars, vans, trucks, and motorcycles. Customers are already lining up outside this big purple, orange, and blue barn with its attached red brick silo sitting just off the edge of a 4-lane highway.
It's a blue pig!
Just in front of the restaurant's entrance, 2 life-size ceramic pigs stand like sentries. A pig in a tutu stands atop the gate post. Customers are leaving as we go in.
That door's heavy. I know it'll break your arm.
It's heavy because it's the original double-hung oak door of this former dairy barn. Once inside, paintings of pigs morph into dragons. Red, pink, and yellow Chinese lanterns hang from the dining room ceiling. There's a string of masks and cartoon characters running the length of the bar. You could easily think you're in a folk art museum. That's Yvonne Thompson, who owns Cuz's, seating customers at one of the 40 hand-painted tables or booths.
When we first opened in 79, it was just, we had 4 tables, and there were lines out the door on the porch.
The lines still go out the door. People arrive by all modes of transportation, from hikers on foot to CEOs who come in by helicopter. As the cashier rings up tabs under the eye of a life-size polar bear, busboys maneuver around papier-mâché pigs.
And of course, we're into pop culture. Pee Wee Herman, who else? Superman, Hulk Hogan, Elvis.
Most of this art was either drawn, painted, or curated by Yvonne's late husband, Mike, an art history major who co-founded the restaurant.
He loved animals, period. There's this cow, but he couldn't stand it because it was too plain, so he painted it with polka dots.
Other art in the restaurant came as gifts from customers, like a life-size cutout of Elvis in pink overalls holding a pig in his arms.
Somebody stole that one time. It was sticking out of the convertible as they left the parking lot. But then they brought it back a few years later. They felt bad. See, everything in here has a history.
I was curious about that history, especially since the mixture of Asian and Appalachian seems pretty impossible to miss. Native hickory wood alongside elephant bamboo. Woodcuts alongside a silk Chinese embroidery of chickens. Turns out Yvonne is Chinese and grew up in Hong Kong. She wanted to go to college in the United States.
And my uncle had a really good Chinese restaurant in St. Louis, Missouri. He was my sponsor, and I came and lived with him and started working in this restaurant from day one.
He not only taught her about restaurants, but he also taught her life lessons. Like the time Yvonne saw an employee put sugar in her purse.
I said, "Look, Uncle, she's taking sugar from you." He said, "Look away, look away." He said, "She's my best cook, my best worker. She can have my sugar." Think of that lesson. Yeah.
Yvonne graduated from the University of Missouri in journalism. After she moved to Richlands, Virginia for her first reporting job, she met and married Mike Thompson. It was Mike's cousin who suggested they start a restaurant in Mike's old family barn sitting empty by the road, so they named it Cuz's. Barbecue was hard to find back then, so it became Cuz's Uptown Barbecue.
But if he was the only one running it, it probably would fold in a year because he didn't know how to run a business. You know what I'm talking about? I'm the business person and have the organization and the skills, but he was the flair, the fun part. That's the yin and the yang. He the yang and I'm the yin.
In the Chinese philosophy of yin and yang, the point is that differences can work together. And Yvonne says she and Mike were the best examples of that. Mike died 4 years ago in an accident, and Yvonne thought strongly about retiring. But she knew how Cousins had become so much a part of the community's life, and she thought Mike would have wanted her to carry on.
He's probably still speaking up to us down from the grave.
Mike's humor is on the menu covers, where each cartoon character or meme reflects his wit. Open the menu, and you'll see it in the food descriptions too. Like the macaroni and cheese, you can order either plain or skanky. That was the word Yvonne says just came into Mike's head when he needed a way to describe blue cheese.
Well, it was a funny word. People are always like, what? But then they laugh about it.
Tartar sauce.
It's early morning at Cousins, and the kitchen's been buzzing since 5 a.m. Yvonne is crimping a pie crust of one of her popular desserts, and she works right alongside her staff, many of whom have been with her for decades.
Praise for the older people. They know how to work.
But there are plenty of young faces, too, among the 30-some people on the payroll. From baby boomers to Gen Zers, Cousins staff call each other family, figuratively and literally. Like 65-year-old dishwasher Judy Conley, who works alongside her 21-year-old niece, Megan Dye. Judy remembers Megan as a baby.
When they first brought her to Cousins, she was about this long, and I got to hold her, and now I'm working with her.
On Mondays, when the task is to make 1,000 egg rolls, the kitchen crew becomes the kitchen brigade, and anyone can get recruited to help. Egg rolls have been on Cousins' menu from the start. The dipping sauce recipe came from Yvonne's uncle, but the version that Yvonne calls a Southern Chinese egg roll came later.
No, actually, one of our old staff came up with the idea. She liked cheese, and she wanted to put a slice of cheese, and the thing that was around was Velveeta, so that's how it came about. And after we tasted it, we thought, wow, that's good.
Good enough to earn a mention in a food exhibit at the Museum of Chinese in America in New York City. Back by the grill, the brick ovens, and the barbecue smoker, award-winning chef Mike Oder, known as Mikey, has just finished cutting up steaks.
This is the prime rib. Just trim it up a little bit.
He's worked at Cousins for 38 years, and now he's also Yvonne's business partner. He's proud of how the staff work together.
Because everybody's been here so long, they just know what needs done. But everybody here's got their own personalities, and we all click good. It's like a family.
Part of Chef Mikey's job is passing down techniques and shortcuts to the younger guys cooking the meats, like Taylor Cole. He started working when he was 15. He has a degree in applied mathematics from Radford University, and he chooses to work here rather than use his degree to teach. But as for applying that math in the kitchen?
Simple math ain't really my strong suit, more of like calculus. I'm way better at calculus than simple math for sure. I'm much rather go do some calculus and then break some tablespoons of teaspoons down. So I'm always like, Mikey, will you do this for me? Because I'm confusing myself trying to figure it out.
He gets satisfaction out of working here.
I love the rush that you get from when you get in 20 steaks filled up on your grill and everyone's just screaming at you. I love it. And I love, making great food for people enjoying it, them telling you they enjoyed it, and knowing that you made that. I don't know, it's a lot of reward.
Stepping out the back door, I see the restaurant's garden not far from the highway. In a good growing season, Yvonne says it allows Cousins to serve exceptionally fresh food, like the corn.
We pick them the day we use them, and you can't hardly buy corn like that. It'd be several days old at least. We're trying to conserve our effort to only grow things that we cannot buy.
One of those heirlooms ends up in an appetizer where Cousins adds an Appalachian twist to the Italian caprese salad, pairing country ham with fresh mozzarella, the basil, balsamic vinegar, and tomato. And this tomato is special because the seed was a gift from a customer whose family had grown it locally for over 100 years. And over the years, it's these kinds of community ties that have sustained Cuz's and been part of its resilience, most recently through COVID sicknesses.
Last Saturday they were closed because they had several employees sick. But there's a group of us told them, we will come and wash dishes, we will prepare salads, we can clean tables, anything to keep from closing.
That's Wanda Lowe, who comes in with her husband almost every Saturday for dinner. And she remembers another time when Cuz's was forced to close. In 2008, a fire destroyed large areas of the kitchen. It damaged the roof, wiring, and furniture. It was actually the second time a major fire had spread through Cuz's. It brought back the despair and made many wonder if this might close the book on the restaurant's history. Yvonne's son Arthur had been home for the summer after just graduating from the College of William and Mary.
He was the one who came to us while we were standing outside seeing the place burning down. He said, "You have to rebuild. This is our legacy. I will stay and help rebuild this place and not take a job until you can open back up." So he stayed and walked through the winter, and then he left when we were able to open the door. He found a job then.
As I got ready to leave, Yvonne and I browsed through the Public Library's county cookbook that included one of Yvonne's recipes along with histories of restaurants. I asked Yvonne what she would want Cuz's to be remembered for.
You know, treating people the way you want to be treated, walking in their shoes. And maybe it's like an older philosophy. So I think maybe the two words that sum up this place is passion and compassion. What do you think? And a heart. And to me, that's the starting point of a good business.
For Inside Appalachia, I'm Connie Bailey Kitts in Pounding Mill, Virginia.
That story was part of our Folkways reporting project, which covers arts and culture in our region. You can find more Folkways stories at our website, wvpublic.org. The Susquehanna River is one of the world's oldest rivers. It's also one of its most threatened. The Susquehanna has been named America's most endangered river multiple times. More than a decade ago, Carol Perenzin became its inaugural riverkeeper. She helped connect people to the river and advocated for its protection. Now Perenzin has a new project. The Allegheny Front's Kara Holsapple has more.
Carol Perenzin has had a long career in water. She's an environmental engineer and an author, including children's books. She founded the Middle Susquehanna Riverkeeper Association, based in central Pennsylvania, and served as its first riverkeeper. And she says she's always loved water.
I think that I was born a mermaid, and I've always been drawn to water in general and the Susquehanna in specific. I spent many, many hours growing up going to the state parks, going to the pool. I was actually a competitive swimmer and a competitive paddler.
This year, she founded The Water Healer, a new environmental education initiative to connect children and adults to rivers through speaking engagements, workshops, consulting, and storytelling. I asked her where the name The Water Healer came from.
First of all, as an environmental engineer with a focus in water, I see myself as being the person that healed it from a technical and engineering perspective, applying what I know to making it better. Whether it's for water, wastewater, our watersheds, our drinking water sources. But also the water as a healer for me. I've actually been out on medical disability for over 5 years. And it was my coming back to the river, as I say, turning over all the stones to find my healing path back to being myself again. The idea of the water healer was I'm here to help others find that water and connect and heal themselves, but I'm also using it as a path for my own healing.
Tell me about your From the Rivers to the Bay series, which follows the journey of the Susquehanna River from its headwaters to the Chesapeake Bay.
Yeah, it actually follows the journey of all the rivers entering the Chesapeake Bay. It's really difficult for people that live in areas that don't directly touch the Chesapeake Bay to care about the Chesapeake Bay. It's not where they're going to recreate. It's not the bridge that they're driving over. The program being best received right now is the program for children on dinosaur birds, which is all about the great blue heron. Every year, the National Library Reading Program has a theme, and this year's theme is unearthing. I wanted to create a program that would help us discover the connection between our modern great blue heron and the dinosaurs. And I wanted to come up with a program that connected them with the past and the present and show that we have modern day dinosaurs, and they're a very strong symbol of river health and water health in the Chesapeake Bay.
What's your philosophy of environmental education and getting people to care about water?
I think you start where you are. You find that connecting point in the backyard, in the town park, in the school playground. You find something there that somebody can care about and let it grow from there. And I think it has to be very experiential. It has to be hands-on. Not everybody learns just by hearing or seeing, reading. They need to have experiences where they can be out on the water, whether it's paddling or creek stomping or sitting by a stream and learning how to meditate to the sound of water. Nature is not separate from us. We are nature. Sometimes we just need to reframe the perspective that we see ourselves.
That was Carol Perenzin speaking with Kara Holsapple. You can learn more about Perenzin's work at the Allegheny Front. Till next time, thanks for joining us as we journey throughout Appalachia. Our theme music is by Matt Jackford. Other music this week was provided by Eric Vincent Huey, Mary Hott, Hello June, and John Ingram. Mason Adams is our show host. Abby Neff is our associate producer. Our executive producer is Eric Douglas. Kelly Libby is our editor. Our audio mixer is Patrick Stevens. We had help this week from Folkways editors Jennifer Gorn and Xander Alloy. You can find us on Instagram and Twitter at InAppalachia. You can also send us an email to insideappalachia@wvpublic.org. Visit wvpublic.org/InsideAppalachia to subscribe to our newsletter and stream all of our stories. Or look for Inside Appalachia on your favorite podcast app. Inside Appalachia is a production of West Virginia Public Broadcasting.